Hey guys, I hope you're all well. So you might have seen in some previous videos yet, my gaming board is complete and there's a video out there showing how I made my gaming board. And obviously all these other little bits and pieces, yeah, there's separate videos for all these as well. I've played a couple of scenarios now on this board, works out absolutely perfectly. But obviously there's loads more scenarios I want to do, but something someone did mention on one of the previous videos was obviously because it is like a static board. Obviously, originally I was going to do a modular board. But if you watch the video that I did the board in, you'll see why I changed. 'Cause obviously, I've got this lovely river cutting sort of halfway through almost the whole of the board, which can work out really, really well. But obviously, it can limit some of the things that I do and make on this board. And I say, someone did sort of mention, well, you're going to be limited to what you can do because you've got a river running through it. And yeah, they're kind of right. So this is where I'm going to turn a static kind of board into a modular board. And how anyone can make their boards very, very modular. So the bridge, yeah, we'll get rid of the bridge. And then what we kind of really need to do is this expansive area, let's fill it with, well, a huge bit of land. And obviously this has got a low road and a high road, which is pretty cool. And this is obviously what I'm going to show how I made in this video. So as I say, this now sort of gives me a lot more land to play with, and obviously reduces the size of the river to a couple of little bits either side. And this is where, say, you can make a static board very modular by making extra pieces for it, which don't take up too much room. This thing's pretty light. And yeah, so this video, I'm going to show how I made this lovely chunky bit in the middle. That gives me a lot more land to fight on, which is going to be pretty cool. So yeah, there's a scenario coming up where you've got to escort the holy relic of some sort. So as you can see, yeah, obviously I make this river going through it. Absolutely love how the river turned out. But as I say, sometimes you do need to get rid of that because obviously, well, it does sort of limit the amount of land that you've got. So to make the bit that I just showed you, obviously I don't want it again, so I don't want it to be heavy. So it's not like the whole thing is 3D printed. It's used out of this good old foam packing material. I've had some printers and laser engravers turn up recently, and I always keep any of this kind of stuff just because, well, you never know when you might want to use it. So because obviously I have got rocks, the ground itself is reasonably level, but there are these little rocky areas and a few other little bits in the way. So what I first need to do is mark up so I can cut some channels in this foam. Just because obviously when I put it on the board, I want it so it lays flat basically. So yeah, so we need to get rid of those sort of bits. The good thing about this polystyrene stuff, it is easy to sort of cut, break up. I don't have a hot wire gun. Otherwise, well, I would have used one of those. So I've just got a knife and a bit of brute force there. As you can see, it doesn't matter if it rips it because, well, this thing doesn't need to be neat and precise because it is going to get covered in a whole lot of other stuff, which you'll see coming up later on in the video. So yeah, I've kind of roughly cut it to the size that I need. Again, a lot of this is eyeballing. In my head, I have a rough idea of what it is I want to make. On the very rare occasions, I do sometimes draw things down. Well, when I say draw things down, a 5-year-old could draw the kind of things that I draw. But typically, the idea for everything I do is in my head. And then obviously, I just hope that it comes out and looks how it looks in my head. Although I will be honest here, guys, as always, whenever I make mistakes or do something wrong, I keep it in. I did 3 attempts at what I'm showing you. This is the first attempt. And obviously I'll tell you why each one kind of failed as we go along. So yeah, cutting the channels out. Again, just using the old blade there, and then obviously scooping the things out with my hand. Obviously there are some bits here that I am going to speed up just because, well, it's quite a long process, some of this. Again, if I had a hot wire gun, probably would have been able to go through this a breeze. Haven't got one of them. So yeah. The one thing I will say about this stuff, it is as messy as anything. Obviously, it's made up of like little balls of polystyrene. So I cut the channel out. I had to cut it out several times because obviously this river isn't a straight one. It's got a little wibbly wobbly bit. But it was a case of trying to get it so this thing lays flat. But as you can see, yeah, even after several attempts, it's not laid as flat as I wanted. And that's kind of why I gave up on this. At the moment, as you can see, yeah, this isn't where I gave up. I carried on, thinking, yeah, I can sort the bottom out. So obviously I want to have the roads sort of cut through it. And again, same sort of process as underneath, in a case of just scoring roughly where the road is going to go, and then pulling this stuff out. And I say, honestly, I think I'm still finding these little polystyrene balls under my desk. Yeah, it's just, it's a messy job. And I kind of wish I hadn't started it. But yeah, so obviously putting the stuff out to get the road in there, I then kind of realised the bit of material I've got, it's a bit too chunky. So I'd have to cut out a whole load of that stuff. And I say it's not quick unless you've got a gun, not a gun, um, the old heat thingy. So yes, I found some other sort of kind of packing material. I thought, oh, this is a sort of a better height for what I want. So again, same thing what I've just done. I glued loads of bits together. Um, this stuff, yeah, this stuff doesn't make half as much of a mess. It's a little bit harder to sort of break into because, I say, it doesn't sort of flake apart half as much as the polystyrene balls. So, say this is now take two of me attempting this. Again, though, get guys, you know, whenever I make things or do things, I will obviously always leave in mistakes or changes that I do to whatever it is I'm making, just so you can see that, yeah, sometimes you need to sort of change tack on what you're doing. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't work, or sometimes you're just not happy with the result you're getting with whatever it is you're doing. So again, yeah, got some channels out the bottom. Started making this sort of leveled either side, but the problem with this one was the bottom was too flat. So again, it wasn't laying well on the board. So mark three now, or take three. I thought, well, let's get the bits, put them on the board, and then we'll join them together. Because then I know that all the bits that need to be cut out have been cut out. And I know this will lay perfectly on the board. So that other one, I've made the bottom flat. Well, my board obviously isn't that flat. So yeah, 3D printed some of the old road things, got them on there. To say it was a nice high road, low road, and a nice incline that the miniatures can sort of go on and won't just slip off. So yeah, this is obviously all made in bits. It's a little bit wibbly wobbly at the moment, but I do rectify that in a minute. But this time I'm much happier because everything lays perfectly where it should do, and obviously it doesn't get interfered with any of the rocks or bits and pieces that's already on my board. So talking of rocks, yeah, these are the same sort of rocks that I use to go along the outer edge of the river. And the great thing, obviously, with 3D printing, you can make things as big as you want. So rather than the small little rocks, I've made some, well, some nice big boulders. And these are going to go around the edge. So obviously, I want a nice way that this sort of this terrain piece merges in with the board, just to make the whole thing feel like it's there all the time, as opposed to it being obviously a bit that can come off and go back on. So one of my favorite materials to work with, you're going to see me use this tons of times in all kinds of videos, good old grout, or I think it's called spackle, is it, in America? Yeah, you use this to fix tiles with, or fix holes in walls. Basically, you can put it anywhere and everywhere. It's kind of quite dirt cheap, but it's easy to use. And obviously, you can buy it in a variety of different size pots and stuff. So this is going to go over the whole of the top of the board. Again, this is going to give it a bit more firmness now. So when I pick it up, it won't be, well, wibbly wobbly like it was when you first saw me, well, pick it up. And now, obviously, some sand. Um, Again, this stuff, guys, don't go and buy the little packs of sand or even any kind of basic material. What you want to look for is the fish tank stuff. Because you get a huge big bag for about £8, and you can get obviously rather fine sort of stones like this. You can get thicker stones, or all kinds of stuff. But say any kind of basic material, yeah, you want to get the stuff for fish tanks, just because it probably costs the same amount as it does for like a small little bag. But in this case, you get a huge big bag. Apologies there, the camera's having a bit of a wibbly wobbly time, and that's because obviously it's right in front of my face, and sometimes I do catch it with my arm. So putting the sand on, yeah, it just helps with the rocks. Because obviously with the rocks, I printed them out at a very low resolution on a filament printer, so you can see layer lines. But just by adding the sand, obviously helps give them a bit more texture, actually, so you can't see the layer lines. And obviously just put it along the edge of the road as well, just to make it look like it is some sort of dirt of some sort. But again, this is what I love doing, and this is what I do with all the rocks. And again, it fills in the gaps as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, well, again, talking of gaps, I wanted to make an area so I can get from the top bit to this lower road. So I'm just kind of cutting out a step. I hadn't thought about this at the time, which is why, well, I didn't cut it out sort of before putting all the rocks in. But this is where obviously you can change your mind as you go along. And when you're making things out of this kind of material, say it is so easy to sort of cut and change as you're going on. And I just like the idea that if you're on the lower road, then you can sort of make it up to the top one, or vice versa. Again, just gives you a bit more sort of options when you're playing the game that you can sort of move around. So everything's been primed in black. Now I'm going to do some dry brushing over the rocks. Obviously, I've got some sort of fake grass and bits to do in a minute, but it needs to get the rocks kind of painted as well as the road painted first. So yeah, good old dry brushing. And so that goes over the rocks and over the floor work. And this is sort of the stage we're at. But before I put the grass and stuff on, let's just get a wash over everything. This is the wash that I made. Is basically sort of sepia ink, and then mix with a load of water and a little bit of washing up liquid, which is why you'll see there there's a load of bubbles. I may well have put too much washing up liquid in. I'm not too sure. Again, I'm very new to making my own washes. All I know is this works how I want it to work. Yeah, you just got to ignore all the bubbles. But I think sometimes that kind of helps because when you do put the wash on, sometimes the wash seems to be thicker in areas. And by thicker, I mean thicker with like the paint, and more watery in other areas. So using these good old dipping inks, Alfred Brown and a zombie dip, to paint all the rocks. Again, I didn't want them to be sort of like grey because then that just looks a bit too pants really. So a little bit of a combination of this sort of greenish colour and a brownish colour. Although on the video they pretty much look the same. There was a little bit of difference. Not, I mean, it's not too vast, but again, it just helps make things look a little bit more natural. And yeah, just better than obviously black and white. So now to the fun stuff. I'm using the same little green squares that I used on the board. So that's why obviously using the same materials, this is going to make this look exactly like the board. So when you put it on the board, yeah, it all merges and ties in. So I want to try and sort of feather the edge from this onto the board. So that's why I'm going over the edge of what I've sort of made on this piece. Um, Again, because when I say it every time when I'm making these kind of things, but I want to make this usable as a sort of gaming board, but I also want it to look good for sort of like dioramas. So I can take pictures of the sort of terrain that I make, as well as obviously the miniatures. Um, yeah, so I obviously always in the back of my head, I'm trying to make this look as good as it can as a diorama, as well as being very playable. And it certainly is playable. As I played several games of Pillage now, absolutely love the thing. Haven't played a game yet using this because I've literally only just made this. So hopefully next week when I play my mate, yeah, we'll be using this. And I say it's just nice that I've now got the options of having like the bridge go over the water or this big chunk of land go over the water, as it does give more of an area to sort of obviously fight on. I could put buildings up on here or all kinds of things really. Again, this is where making a static board into a modular board is pretty cool. So then you really can vary the board you're playing on. And it doesn't feel like you're playing on the same thing every time, which is obviously what you want from a modular kind of board. So yeah, just cutting this stuff. I do try and cut with this blade. I think the blade's a bit too well, cream crackered really. So it is easier with scissors. But there we go. So that doesn't look too bad. Obviously, using these squares, you can see the join lines really clearly. And if you watch the video where I made the full board, yeah, you'll have seen the join lines in that. But that's why I use the this sort of static flock. Not that I've got one of those static guns. I just literally put it in a little sieve, quite literally a little sieve, and then sort of sprinkle it on. And this obviously gets rid of obviously those join lines. So again, using the good old PVA here, PVA mixed with water. I think it's kind of like a 50-50 mix, maybe 40% PVA, and then the rest is water. Obviously, as you can see, there are some bits there where it did shoot out in a jet rather than a fine spray. So I did have to adjust it a little bit and put a bit more water in the mix, so it only just mixed it up. And then just sprinkle this stuff everywhere. So this is kind of pretty much the stuff I used on the board, so it will just blend in really nice. And then for the edges, I've got this stuff. I keep forgetting what this is. I need to look because this is where my memory is shockingly bad. I've got a big block. Basically, you scrape stuff off, and well, this is what you scrape off. So I've glued that everywhere, and again, sepia wash to come out, just because I want it to look like it's like a muddy kind of dirt around the edges of the path. So yeah, just putting a wash over the top, obviously filling up the brush nicely so it does sort of spread out, and just gets in all the nooks and crannies. But again, this is what I did on the main board. So yeah, whatever I did on the main board, that's kind of how I'm doing things on this. And then just to sort of finish bits off, with all these rocks, I don't like that there's obviously just rocks. So we're going to mix it in with some tufts of grass, and some bits that look like little hedges and stuff. So I've got a nice little drawer. All this stuff, I think I've got it all from Temu, just because it's dirt cheap. I think you can get like one of these sheets for like about £1, 1.99 ish. Um, so yeah, I've ordered loads more bits and pieces just because I say it's cheap, cheerful, but does the job. Uh, like me, really. But yeah, so putting these everywhere, and then that is it, sort of complete. I did put some more sort of bushy stuff along the edges of the rocks, the same stuff I used on the trees, just to so help merge it all together. And then yeah, it fits in perfectly. What I might do is get some blue tack to go underneath the edges of the road, just so they stay down. But other than that, absolutely love how this has come out. And I say I've just added a rather large section of land to the board game, obviously reducing the amount of water that's there. And again, this just gives so many more options for how to play this game, which is kind of what we want, because we don't want to be playing on the same board all the time, because then things get a bit monotonous, a bit dull. So yeah, being able to make these extra bits to turn a static board into a very modular board, and again, being able to take pictures, um, so it blends in really nicely with the board. Looks like it is part of the board, and yeah, for diorama purposes, I'll be able to get some great shots when I paint up some more miniatures, which is really good. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave some comments down below. Let me know what you thought about it, what you might see in the future. Yeah, there's Indy, my little cat, although she is getting a lot bigger now. She loves walking around on this table. Yeah, she's definitely gonna be on my side, and she'll be able to make me win every time. So yeah, love to say the fact that you can sort of go over, still fork in the road, go high road, low road, but being able to get from one to the other over that little bit in the right hand corner there is pretty cool. So as I say, this is going to be obviously a modular board, so I will be making more and more sort of bits and pieces. This really can change the layout and make some sort of nice different bits of higher bits and lower bits. I say my initial plan with this board was to make it nice and flat just for storage. But obviously you want to have raised areas. So if you have archers up, say up high, then they've got the advantage shooting down on people lower. And it just makes obviously some dodgy terrain for your miniatures to try and climb up, and then fall to their deaths, and all the rest of it. So yeah, guys, that's kind of pretty much everything. So I really enjoyed making this bit. I can't wait to use this in my next game. So yeah, all the fun stuff, guys. Like, share, subscribe, leave comments, all that kind of thing. You guys all take care. See you in the next one. Bye for now.